The spaceship landed quietly on the human base, its silver surface reflecting the sunlight. People gathered around, whispering and pointing. They had been told that a young alien girl would come as part of a cultural exchange program, but no one knew what she would be like. Some expected someone proud or powerful, like the stories of alien queens and warriors. Instead, when the doors opened, a small figure stepped out. She was different from what most imagined. She had soft features, eyes that looked too big for her face, and a quiet way of moving as if she wanted to disappear into the background. Her long, pale hair framed her face, falling like silk down her shoulders. She wore a simple dress, not the grand armor of alien warriors. She looked shy. The commander of the human base cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Welcome. You must be Lyra." The girl nodded slowly, her eyes lowering to the ground. She spoke in a soft voice, almost a whisper. "Yes, I am Lyra." Her accent was gentle, her words careful, as if she had practiced many times before speaking. Them. She did not meet anyone's eyes for long, but when she did, there was a spark of curiosity hidden in them. Among the humans who had gathered stood a young man named Daniel. He was not a soldier or a scientist. He worked in maintenance, fixing machines and helping where needed. He had not expected to be part of the welcoming group, but he had been carrying a toolbox when the ship landed, and curiosity had kept him there. When Lyra's gaze passed over the crowd, it stopped for a moment on Daniel. She quickly looked away, but he noticed. There was something in her eyes, nervousness, yes, but also interest. The commander gave a formal speech about peace, cooperation, and the importance of understanding each other's cultures. Lyra listened politely, nodding when expected, but her mind seemed far away. She looked at the families who had come to watch, the children holding their parents' hands, the mothers adjusting coats, the fathers lifting little ones onto their shoulders. Her eyes followed these small actions carefully, almost hungrily, as if she was trying to understand something deeper than the words around her. After the speech, the crowd began to leave. Lyra was shown to her new quarters. It was a simple room, with a bed, a desk, and a small window. She stood inside for a long time, touching the edge of the bed as if testing whether it was real. On her homeworld, she had never had her own private space. Everything there was shared, controlled, and impersonal. That evening, Daniel was called to check on the electrical system in her quarters. He knocked on the door softly. "Come in," came the small voice. He entered, carrying his toolbox. Lyra sat on the bed with her hands folded in her lap. She looked nervous, her eyes darting to him and then to the floor. "The lights were flickering," she said, her tone uncertain, as if afraid she had done something wrong. Daniel smiled. "Don't worry, it happens sometimes. I'll fix it." He began working on the panel near the wall. Lyra watched silently. Her gaze followed his hands as he connected wires and tightened screws. Finally, she gathered enough courage to ask, "You fix things?" Daniel nodded, glancing at her. "Yeah, that's my job. Machines break, I repair them." Lyra hesitated, then whispered, "On my world, only machines fix machines, not people." Daniel chuckled softly. "Well, here, we like to do things with our own hands. Makes us feel useful." Lyra tilted her head, processing his words. "Useful," she repeated quietly, almost tasting the word. When Daniel finished, he stood and wiped his hands. The lights in the room glowed steadily now. "There. You go. No more flickering." "Thank you," she said, bowing her head slightly. Her voice was soft but sincere. Daniel gave her a friendly smile. "Anytime." He started toward the door but paused when he heard her whisper again. "Wait." He turned back. Lyra was fidgeting with the fabric of her dress, her cheeks slightly pink. Why do human mothers hold their children's hands?" she asked. Daniel blinked, surprised by the question. "Because they don't want them to get lost. And because it feels nice to be close." She lowered her eyes, whispering, "On my world, There is no hand to hold. For a moment, Daniel didn't know what to say. He could see the loneliness in her posture, the way her shoulders curled as if trying to make herself smaller. He nodded, slowly. Well, maybe here you'll find one. Lyra's eyes lifted, meeting his for just a second. There was a spark there, hope mixed with curiosity. But then she quickly looked away again, too shy to hold his gaze. That night, as the base grew quiet, Lyra sat by her window, watching the stars. Her heart was heavy with questions she had never dared ask at home. She had read about humans before, arriving, studied their books and data. But no amount of reading explained what she had seen: the warmth between families, the laughter of children, the soft comfort of a mother's embrace. She whispered to herself, "I want to understand." For her, understanding was more than just knowledge. It was something she wanted to feel. And deep inside, a thought was growing, a secret wish she did not yet have the courage to share. The next morning, Lyra woke early. The human base was already busy, with workers moving equipment and children running past the halls. She stayed inside her room for a while, hugging her knees to her chest. On her homeworld, mornings had always been strict. No laughter, no noise, just orders. Here, it was different. It was noisy, messy, but full of life. When Daniel came by to check if everything was working, she found herself waiting by the door. She opened it before he could knock. "Oh, hi," Daniel said, surprised by her quickness. He carried a small box of tools as usual. Lyra shifted nervously. "Good morning," she whispered. He smiled. "Morning. Did the lights give you trouble? Again?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I just wondered if you were coming." Daniel raised an eyebrow, amused but kind. "Well, here I am. Do you need something?" Lyra hesitated, her hands fidgeting. Her cheeks warmed, but she finally whispered, "Yes. I have questions." Daniel closed his toolbox and leaned against the wall. "All right, ask me anything." Her voice was so soft that he had to lean closer to hear. "Why do human mothers hold their children, even when they are tired?" Daniel tilted his head, thoughtful. "Because children need comfort. When a child feels scared or sad, being held makes them feel safe." Lyra's brows drew together. "Safe? From what?" "From loneliness," Daniel said gently. The alien girl blinked. On her planet, loneliness was never discussed. People were raised by machines, not by parents. There was no one to comfort, no one to miss. She looked down, whispering, "On my world, no one carries anyone." Daniel gave her a warm smile. "Well, maybe that's why you're so curious." She nodded, almost ashamed. But she didn't stop. Her curiosity pushed past her shyness. "I read in a book that human women grow life inside them. Is that true?" Daniel was caught off guard. He scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, that's what pregnancy is. A baby grows inside the mother until it's ready to be born." Lyra's face flushed pink. She looked both embarrassed and fascinated. How can life grow inside another life? It sounds impossible." Daniel chuckled softly. "It does sound strange, but it's natural for us. The baby starts very small, so small you can't even see it without special tools. Then it grows day by day, month by month, until it's ready to come into the world." Lyra hugged her arms around herself, as if trying to imagine what that felt like. Her eyes grew distant. "That is beautiful." Daniel noticed the way her voice trembled. He could tell she wasn't just curious. She was touched deeply by the idea. Later that day, Lyra followed him to the repair workshop. She was too shy to ask if she could come, so she simply walked a few steps behind until he noticed. "Are you following me?" Daniel asked with a grin. She froze, her cheeks turning bright red. I didn't mean to disturb you." "Daniel," laughed gently. "You're not disturbing me. If you want to watch, that's fine." So she sat quietly on a bench watching him fix a broken console. Every now and then she would whisper another question. "Do babies know their mothers before they are born?" "Not really," Daniel explained, tightening a wire. "But they feel her heartbeat, hear her voice. They know her warmth." Her eyes softened. "So they belong together, even before they meet." Another time she asked, "Why do fathers stay? The baby does not grow inside them." Daniel paused. "Because love is not just about carrying life. It's about sharing life. Fathers protect, support and love both the mother and the child." Her lips curved slightly at that answer. It was not quite a smile, but close. That evening, Lyra gathered her courage. She knocked on Daniel's door instead of waiting for him to come to hers. He opened it, surprised. "Lyra, something wrong?" he asked. She stepped inside slowly. Her eyes were wide, her hands trembling. "Daniel, do humans ever regret having children?" Daniel thought carefully. "Sometimes it's hard, yes. Sometimes people struggle, but most of the time, no. They see their children as gifts. Even in hard times, love makes it worth it." Lyra sat on the edge of his table, looking at the floor. "On my planet, there is no love between parent and child. Machines create us. We are raised to serve. We never belong to anyone, and no one belongs to us." Daniel's chest tightened at her words. He sat across from her, speaking gently. "That sounds lonely." She nodded, her voice breaking into a whisper. "I don't want to be lonely. I want to understand what it means to belong." Silence filled the room. Daniel didn't know what to say. He wasn't a scientist or a teacher, he was just a mechanic. But somehow Lyra had chosen him to ask these questions. Finally, he said, "Then maybe that's why you're here. Not just for the program, but to learn what family really means." Lyra lifted her head. Her shy eyes met his, and for the first time she didn't look away immediately. There was trust in her gaze. When she left his room that night, Daniel sat back in his chair, thoughtful. He had met many people in his life, but none like her. She was fragile, curious, and full of unspoken longing. He didn't know where her questions would lead, but he knew one thing. She wasn't just here to learn about humans. She was here to find something her own world had never given her. And deep inside, she was already forming a wish too big to hide for long. Days passed, and the human base grew used to seeing the shy alien girl walking quietly through the halls. At first, people whispered when she passed. Some pointed, others stared, but soon her presence became part of daily life. She was gentle, never causing trouble, always polite. Children liked her, though she was too shy to play with them. She would watch from a distance, her wide eyes filled with silent longing as they ran and laughed. Daniel noticed this more than anyone. Every time Lyra's gaze lingered on a mother carrying her baby, or on children hugging their parents, his heart ached for her. He knew she was trying to understand something her own world had never given her. One evening, Daniel was repairing a water pump near the edge of the base. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and pink. He heard light footsteps behind him and turned to see Lyra. She stood there quietly, her hands clasped together, her expression nervous. "You followed me again," Daniel said with a small smile. Her cheeks turned pink. "I did not mean to intrude." "You're not intruding," Daniel said gently. He put down his tools. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated for a long time, her lips parting and closing again. Finally, she whispered, "Daniel, I have something I must tell you." His smile faded. The seriousness in her voice made him straighten. "Go ahead." She walked closer, her eyes fixed on the ground. "I came here to learn about humans. My leaders wanted me to study your culture, your ways of living, but there is something more, something I never told them." Daniel's brows drew together. "What is it?" Her hands trembled slightly. She pressed them to her chest, gathering her courage. "I want to experience what it means to carry life. Daniel froze. For a moment, he thought he had heard her wrong. You mean pregnancy? She nodded slowly, her face burning with embarrassment. Yes. He let out a sharp breath. Lyra, that's not a small thing to ask. Why would you want that? Her voice quivered, but she spoke with determination. Because I do not understand it. On my world, new life is made in machines. We never know who created us, we never belong to anyone. But when I see human mothers and I see love, I see something strong. I want to feel that strength. I want to know what it means to belong to another life. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, struggling for words. He had expected many questions from her, but not this. Lyra, pregnancy is difficult. It's not just about carrying life, it's about pain, responsibility, sacrifice. Her large eyes lifted to his, shimmering with emotion. I am not afraid of pain. I am afraid of never knowing love. The words hit him like a weight. He stared at her, seeing not just an alien girl, but someone fragile and brave at the same time. She wasn't asking out of curiosity anymore, she was asking out of need. He sighed deeply. Even if you wanted this, it may not even be possible. You're not human. Her shoulders lowered, but she didn't give up. If it is not possible, now then I will wait. If science can help, I will try. I do not care how long it takes. I only want the chance. Daniel sat on a nearby rock, his mind racing. He wasn't a scientist. He had no answers, but he knew one thing. Lyra was serious. This wasn't a passing thought. This was her heart's wish. He looked at her quietly for a long moment. Finally, he said, Lyra, even if you found a way, pregnancy is not just about the body. It's about love, family, and the people around you. You can't do it alone. She stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. That is why I came to you. You are the first human who listens. You are the first who makes me feel safe. If I cannot, ask you, and then who else? Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say. He had never asked for this responsibility, but she had placed her trust in him. He could see the fear in her eyes, fear that he might reject her, fear that she might remain alone forever. He spoke carefully. Lyra, I can't promise you what you're asking, but I can promise this. I'll stand by you, I'll help you learn, I'll make sure you're not alone. Her lips parted slightly and her eyes softened. For the first time, she let out a small smile, a shy, fragile smile, but real. Thank you, she whispered. That night, Daniel lay awake in his room, staring at the ceiling. Lyra's words echoed in his mind. I am afraid of never knowing love. He wondered what kind of world would raise children without parents, without warmth. No wonder she longed for something different. Meanwhile, in her own room, Lyra sat by the window gazing at the stars. Her heart was racing, but she felt lighter than ever before. For so long, her wish had been a secret, too strange to speak aloud. But now Daniel knew, and he hadn't laughed, he hadn't scolded, he had listened. She whispered to herself, I will not give up. One day, I will know what it means, and in the quiet of the night, a new determination grew inside her. Shy as she was, Lyra had taken her first brave step. The next steps would be harder, but her heart was ready. The morning after Lyra confessed her secret wish, Daniel could tell something in her had changed. She was still shy, still soft-spoken, but now there was a new light in her eyes, determination. When she walked through the halls of the human base, she no longer only observed. She began to ask gentle questions, to others, testing her courage. People were surprised, but most answered kindly. Daniel noticed how the scientists on base had started to take interest in her too. Rumors spread about her unusual curiosity. One day, Dr. Karen Holt, a biologist, approached Daniel. I hear your alien friend has been asking questions about pregnancy, she said, pushing her glasses up her nose. Daniel hesitated. She's just curious, don't make it sound strange. Dr. Holt tilted her head, studying him. Curiosity is good. But she doesn't want just knowledge, does she? She wants experience. Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, she told me, and honestly, I don't know what to do about it. Instead of laughing, Dr. Holt looked thoughtful. Maybe we shouldn't dismiss her. If she truly wants to understand, we can find a safe way. Not actual pregnancy, of course. Not yet. But simulations, learning models, sensory connections, enough to give her a sense of what mothers go through. Daniel's eyes widened. You can really do that? Dr. Holt smiled faintly. We've done similar things for medical training. If she's willing, we can try. Later that evening, Daniel told Lyra what the doctor had said. At first, Lyra's cheeks flushed pink and her hands fidgeted nervously. Simulations? She whispered. Daniel nodded. It wouldn't be real, but it would let you feel some of the things human mothers feel. Safely. She pressed her hands to her chest. Her voice trembled. Even that would mean so much to me. The next day, Lyra sat in the laboratory surrounded by scientists. She looked small in the large chair, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Daniel stood beside her, giving her an encouraging smile. Dr. Holt explained, this program will create gentle sensations, weight, pressure, warmth. It will not harm you. It's only meant to show what pregnancy feels like over time. Lyra nodded, her pale fingers gripping the armrest tightly. I am ready. The machine hummed to life. Sensors wrapped around her waist, chest, and back. Slowly, Lyra felt a strange warmth spreading across her body. Her eyes widened, her lips parting in surprise. It feels heavy, she whispered. Doctor? Holt smiled. That's the point. Carrying life is not light. Daniel leaned closer. You okay? She nodded quickly, though her face showed awe and disbelief. It is so real. As days turned into weeks, Lyra returned to the lab often. Each time she grew more comfortable. She would close her eyes during the sessions, her hands resting gently over her abdomen, imagining what it would be like to truly carry life inside her. Daniel noticed how these experiences began to change her. She became less shy, more open. Once he found her sitting with a group of children, letting them show her their toys. She laughed softly when a small girl handed her a doll. You look good with that, Daniel teased later. Lyra blushed, holding the doll close. It felt right. One evening after a long session, Lyra and Daniel sat outside under the stars. She leaned against the railing, looking at the night sky with quiet wonder. Daniel, she whispered, before, I only wanted to understand pregnancy. But now, I realize, what I really want is family. Not just the feeling in my body, but the bond that connects people. Daniel's heart softened. That's what makes pregnancy special. It's not just biology, it's love. Lyra turned to him, her eyes shining. When I sit in the simulation, I imagine a small heartbeat inside me. And I imagine someone waiting beside me, always there, always protecting. That thought makes me feel warm. Daniel smiled gently. Sounds like you're beginning to understand. She lowered her gaze, her voice barely audible. I think what I really wanted all along was to belong. To someone. To something greater than myself. Daniel didn't answer right away. He simply stood beside her, giving her the comfort of his presence. She didn't need complicated explanations. She needed to know she wasn't alone. In the following weeks, Lyra's transformation became even clearer. The shy girl who once avoided eye contact now began to greet people with small smiles. She joined the humans during meals, listening to their stories. She asked mothers to tell her about their children, and she listened as if each word was a treasure. One day, a toddler ran toward her and stumbled, falling. Without thinking, Lyra rushed forward and lifted the child gently into her arms. Her child clung to her, and she froze for a moment, stunned by the closeness. Then slowly her arms tightened around the little one, her eyes filling with tears. Daniel, watching from a distance, knew then that she had already begun to find what she was looking for. That night, Lyra whispered to him, "When the child held me, I felt something deep, like I was not empty anymore." Daniel's chest tightened with emotion. "That's the feeling of belonging, Lyra. That's love." Her eyes softened, and she gave him the faintest smile. "Then maybe I am no longer alone." In that moment, Daniel realized that her journey wasn't only about learning pregnancy, it was about finding her place in the universe. She had come as a timid outsider, but she was slowly becoming part of something bigger, a family, even if not by blood. And though her path was still uncertain, one thing was clear: she would never face it alone. Weeks had passed since Lyra first stepped onto the human base. The shy alien girl who once hid behind her silence was no longer the same. She was still quiet, still gentle, but now her eyes carried a new light. She had learned more than she ever thought possible, not only about humans but about herself. Daniel noticed the change most of all. She walked differently now, with a softness that carried strength. She smiled more often, even if her smiles were small and shy. And she had grown closer to the children, who adored her. Sometimes Daniel would see her kneeling in the courtyard, surrounded by little ones as they tugged at her hands and clothes, showing her their drawings or toys. She never pushed them away. Instead, she listened as though every word they spoke mattered. One afternoon, Lyra sat with Daniel in the garden near the base. The air was warm, the sound of laughter echoing in the distance. She held a flower in her hands, turning it carefully, as if it were the most delicate treasure. "Daniel," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the petals, "I think I understand now." He leaned back on the bench, watching her. "Understand what?" Her voice trembled with emotion. "When I first came here, I wanted to experience pregnancy because I thought it was the only way to feel what humans feel. But now, I see that it is not just about carrying life. It is about sharing life. It is about belonging to someone and letting someone belong to you." Daniel smiled softly. "That's family, Lyra." She looked up, her eyes shining. "Family," she repeated, tasting the word like it was both strange and beautiful. "On my world, that word has no meaning. But here, it feels real." For a long moment they sat in silence, listening to the wind. Then Lyra continued, "When I held that child the other day, I felt something warm inside me. It wasn't from the simulation. It wasn't from science. It was from the child's touch. That is when I realized, I don't need machines to feel. I just need people." Daniel's chest tightened at her words. He had seen her struggle, her curiosity, her longing. And now, hearing her say this, he knew she had finally found what she was searching for. That evening, Dr. Holt invited Lyra to the lab one last time. The scientist wanted to show her the final stage of the simulation, a complete experience that represented the final moment of pregnancy, the bond of mother and child. Lyra agreed, though her heart was nervous. Daniel stood beside her as the sensors were placed around her once more. Dr. Holt spoke gently. "This is only a program, Lyra, but it will give you one last glimpse of what it means to carry life." The machine began. Lyra closed her eyes, her breathing soft. She felt the familiar weight and warmth around her body. But then something new. A rhythm, faint but steady. A heartbeat. Her lips parted in wonder. "I hear it," she whispered. Daniel leaned closer. "What do you hear?" "A heartbeat," she said, her voice shaking. "Not mine. Another one. Small but strong." Tears welled in her eyes. She placed her hands over her chest, overwhelmed by the sensation. "It feels like I am not alone anymore." Daniel's hand rested gently on her shoulder. "That's the bond, Lyra. The connection between two lives." When the simulation ended, Lyra opened her eyes slowly. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she was smiling. Not the shy, uncertain smile from before, but a smile full of peace. "Thank you," she whispered to the scientists. Then she turned to Daniel. I understand now. It is not just about carrying life. It is about carrying love. From that day forward, Lyra's place among the humans was no longer uncertain. She was no longer the outsider who hid in silence. She became part of the base community, helping with small tasks, spending time with children, and sitting with families to listen to their stories. People no longer whispered about her. They welcomed her,